when I'd go to the grocery store, obviously I'd check out the seafood display. And what they were offering, it was labeled as wild Alaskan salmon, but it looked so different from what was in my freezer.
Hello and welcome to Starting Small. My name is Cameron Nagel, and what you're about to hear is a resilient story to an entrepreneur's journey over the brand that we know and consume today. At Starting Small, I believe that everyone has a story to tell under one philosophy. Everyone starts small. Even these founders have once started where you are, in their parents' kitchen, basement, out of a wagon, and many more. At Starting Small, we discuss the strategies used, the obstacles overcome, and the successes of an entrepreneur's journey. So sit back, relax, and enjoy this episode of Starting Small, and make sure to leave a review to let us know how you enjoyed it. Hello, and thank you for tuning in to Starting Small. Today, I'm joined by Kyle Lee of Alaskan Salmon Company. Kyle, thank you so much for joining me today.
Hey, Cameron. Thanks a lot for having me. Super excited to be here.
Of course. So I'd like to start out with your upbringing. Where did you grow up, and what would you say your childhood was like?
Yeah, so my upbringing, originally born and raised in Anchorage, Alaska, but honestly, my story starts, way before that. So I kind of preface it a little bit. My parents are originally from Taiwan, and so they immigrated over to Alaska in the late 70s. And much like many other immigrants, have a very similar story where they just hustled and worked 2 to 3 jobs. They had like a 1-bedroom apartment they shared with my aunt and uncle, and they, just like all grinded, worked together in order to save up and, build a future for themselves. Fast forward a few years, they had me, and they opened up a couple fast food restaurants in town. One's called Chopsticks and one's called Thai Garden. They're still running it to this day. So they've been in business for over 30 years.
Amazing.
So yeah, my kind of upbringing was in the restaurant. So my parents, they couldn't really like afford daycare or anything like that, and they were just so busy. I remember, like, I've seen pictures of me like being strapped. What are those called? Like swaddles, being like swaddled on my mom's back, or like in front, like when she's running the cash register, or like rolling egg rolls on the back. So that's
wow.
And so that's like when we were really small. And then even when we grew up, my sister and I, we'd spend like Halloweens there. There's like pictures of us like running around the back with our costumes. And so yeah, that was kind of my upbringing. I think that, obviously shaped who I am today. I learned, like, just being surrounded in that business environment, hearing how my parents would interact with them, like between each other, during work hours, after work hours, and also like with suppliers and vendors. And so I think that gave me like a good understanding of like kind of like the daily operations, or like the normal cadences of running a business.
Definitely. In those early years, did you have an entrepreneurial mindset, say helping out your parents at the restaurant, or say your teen years? What did that look like?
That's a great question. So, back then I didn't think much of it. I didn't think it was like an entrepreneurial thing. It was just, right, is what I was raised around, what I was used to. So actually my first entrepreneurial endeavor, I was in elementary school. I would get like a weekly allowance, like a couple bucks, and we had like a neighborhood clubhouse. I think it was like managed by our HOA or whatever, and they'd sell like candy. So I went and bought a pack of sour Skittles. And at the time, that was like brand new. Sour Skittles just came out, and I loved them so much, but I was spending like half my weekly allowance on one pack.
Oh, wow.
And then I've heard of the story of Jack and the Beanstalk. And so when I bought my next pack of sour Skittles, I planted them in my yard. Like, I took a risk. I spent all like half my allowance buying this bag of sour Skittles. I planted them, hoping that they would grow and provide more sour Skittles. But unfortunately, my first entrepreneurial endeavor was a bust. But it was a good learning experience.
Oh my gosh, that's great. So I saw you ended up going to the University of Colorado in 2010. What did you end up studying there, and what led you to attend this university?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, 2010, I went to University of Colorado. I ended up getting my degree in accounting and finance. How I ended up there was primarily, I was also there for like an athletic scholarship. I played soccer for the university, and also they had a pretty well-known business program.
Okay. With your time there, were you a part of any athletics? You said soccer. How long did that continue?
Yeah.
Any clubs as well?
Yeah. I played soccer. I played soccer for the school for all 4 years.
Okay,
And we didn't have any fraternities or anything like that. So I didn't have any, no, I didn't join any other clubs.
definitely. So following your time in college and
And
prior
it's
to,
also, Colorado and Alaska, like they're very similar.
yeah,
Like we have like the same interests, like very outdoorsy, like you can go skiing or like it's really easy to go on a nice hike and be outside.
is that what you're doing during your college years pretty much too as well? We're spending a lot of time outdoors and skiing.
Yeah, spent not so much skiing, but yeah, being outside a lot, running, hiking. Yeah.
Definitely. So following college and prior to the Alaskan Salmon Company, what kind of jobs were you working then with this degree?
Yeah. So throughout college, I would, during the summer times, I was commercial fishing. And then when I was actually in Colorado during the semesters, I was doing various like business internships.
Mhm.
And then right out of college, I moved back to Alaska and I started working at our investment bank there.
Okay.
But then I also, at that time, I had already fallen in love with fishing. So maybe I'll bring it back, like how I originally started commercial fishing
that'd be
in
perfect.
the first place. So commercial fishing is like traditionally like a multi-generational affair. Like, my great grandpa fished and then my grandpa fished, my dad fished, and now I fish, right? So that's
Yeah.
like the more traditional route where like my family, I'm the first venture into commercial fishing. And so it's really unique because when I was in college, a buddy of mine, his dad was fishing and then bought a boat for him. And I was like, man, I would love to try it. I've seen the deadliest catch. Like you guys are a bunch of badasses. It looks like a ton of fun. And for
Yeah.
me, my experiences were working in the kitchen or playing soccer. So I didn't have any like physical labor like under my belt. I'd never done anything like that, and I wanted to try it.
Yeah.
I was like, he's like, yeah, come out. You can come fish with us for like a week or two. And Cameron, I was so excited about the opportunity. I didn't even care if I got paid or not. I was like, I just wanted to do it.
Yeah.
And just had a blast. It was a gorgeous summer. It was like 70 degrees, which is really nice in Alaska. Okay,
Totally.
really nice in Alaska. And you're out on a boat on the water, like fishing with one of your best friends. Like what more could you ask for? So really fell in love with the lifestyle. Okay, and then so now fast forward after college, I accepted my job. And a boat and someone was retiring out of commercial fishing. So like they were selling their whole boat and permit package, which is also very rare. And then so my friends told me about it and they're like, hey, like this deal won't last a long time. Like you should do it.
Yeah.
And then now I'm stuck in between the dilemma, like, okay, like my parents helped put me through college. They sacrificed their life, like working every single day to give, me this opportunity at the American dream. Like, what do I do? Like they obviously want me to stay with my job.
Yeah.
But then I'm torn because I'm being pulled against something that I really love and something I have a huge passion for. I think a lot of people face that problem. Like, what do I do?
Yeah.
Like traditional route, what society thinks I should do versus what makes me happy.
Definitely.
Right. So that was really tough. But at the end of the day, I was just like, hey, I'm young, I'm smart. But commercial fishing, I'm only going to be young and like physically able to do something like this now,
Totally.
not later. So I was like, fuck it, I'm going to do it. I took out a huge loan, borrowed as much money as I could from anyone who would lend me money, and bought the boat permit and started commercial fishing.
Amazing. So can you kind of describe that time period from leaving that last job and to really fully going on board? And what was going through like your mindset, especially at this point? I know it's a big risk, but what was the scope, like the 5-year scope that you wanted to achieve to prove to like your family, also to yourself, that this is what you could do?
Yeah. So that time period was about when I initially found out about the boat and permit being like for sale to the actual fishing season was like 3 months. So it was like really fast. So during that time, I tried to do as much like due diligence as I could. I mean, I'm pretty young, like no experience, so I don't really know much. But I was asking all my friends that I had met in fishing, a lot of really successful business people that I had known, like, hey, this is what I'm going to be doing. This is what I want to do. What do you guys think?
Mhm.
And also at the time, fishing permits were like peak prices. Like these permit, like when I bought it was $240,000. And so like everyone was like, yeah, you shouldn't do it. Like it's a terrible time to buy in. You don't
Yeah.
have nearly enough experience. You've only been on the boat for less than a full season. Like
Yeah.
don't do it. Everyone said don't do it on both sides. Like my
Wow.
parents, like on the professional, like all my parents, they're like, don't do it, stick with your job. And then even also on the commercial fishing side, all my buddies are like, yeah, don't do it. Wait a couple of years. So I had in those very early days, I had no one supporting me, but I just wanted to do it so bad.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm capable, I'm smart, I'll figure it out. And then yeah, that was how I initially started. That was like the thought process at first. First, I wanted some support.
Yeah.
I didn't get that. And then so the next step was like, okay, well, I'm not going to have support. I got to rely on myself. I got to just chug away, just do it. Um, and then so, yeah, once the actual, fishing started, it was a lot different. Like I didn't have to deal with a lot of the outside pressure, right? Like I had already made a choice.
Yeah.
So that part was already behind me. So like the next step was like, okay, how do I stay alive and make some money fishing?
Definitely. Definitely. So, as we evolved into the actual construction of the business, you have the direct to consumer model. I'm curious. I love the line you have on your website. The fish you were catching is different than what we see in grocery stores. Can you explain like the problem you noticed with the current fishing market at that time, or the current salmon market, to what you wanted to solve?
Yeah. So that all started. I realized there was a dislocation in the market, or just disconnect in the market when I was still in college, right? After that first year of commercial fishing, that first summer, my captain was nice enough to let me bring home some salmon, and I would bring it to school, cook family meals for the boys, like on our spaghetti nights, whatever. And then when I'd go to the grocery store, obviously I'd check out the seafood display.
Mhm.
And, even in Colorado, which is like a very, very accessible state, like what they were offering, it was labeled as wild Alaskan salmon, but it looked so different from what was in my freezer.
Mm.
Like the color was lackluster, like the meat was falling apart. It just like didn't look good. But that was normal to them. That's just what they're used to for wild salmon. And I started doing more research, like why is that? Like how is mine so like why is mine bright red and like super fresh? And there's frankly is not.
Yeah.
And that's when I learned that Alaska seafood, it's a commodity, right? And it's treated that way. So it's because it's so far away geographically, a lot of it is exported overseas to be processed. It's frozen, sent overseas to be processed, re-imported and distributed because it's cheaper.
Yeah.
It's cheaper, but like this, like seafood is so delicate. So like every time you freeze and thaw it out, like the quality starts to deteriorate. And so that's the reason why all the grocery stores, like, that's where that disconnect was. And so that's when I realized, okay, there's also this opportunity. And that was also like part of like the driving force. And I bought in and no one had support, like no one would support me. But in the back of my mind, I knew that there's also this like secondary opportunity that I could pursue on top of just the commercial fishing, if that makes sense.
Definitely. So at the early years of launch, where were you sourcing your fishing? Was it specifically all Alaskan, and who was the fisherman for this, etc.? Was it yourself and some friends, or what did that look like?
Yeah. So once I actually started commercial fishing, and I knew, right, there's this idea I wanted to test out. Can we go directly to the people who wanted it and just provide a higher quality salmon? And so we were selling, like, the fish we were selling was strictly from our own catch, right? We had no customers, so that wasn't a problem. And then, but at the same time, I didn't have any connection in the food service space. My parents own 2 restaurants, but they're 2 fast food restaurants in Anchorage.
Yeah.
So in regards to like the lower 48, that was like non-existent. So I honestly just Google search top sushi restaurants in the country, because those are the people who are going to care about quality the most.
Definitely.
Like master sushi chefs and Michelin starred restaurants. And then saw there's like a good concentration in DC, and my cousins live there too. And so I bought a ticket down there and just hit the pavement and had my cousin drive me around for a day, drop me off at restaurants. And I would go in and talk to these chefs with no no samples, just telling the story like, hey, my name's Kyle, I'm a commercial fisherman, I want to skip all the middlemen, I want to ship directly to you.
Yeah.
And a lot of them was like, who the hell is this kid? How did you get in here in the first place? Right.
Yeah.
And then but I was lucky that they were willing to give me a shot, and I've maintained like great relationships and made great friends since then.
Amazing. So I'm curious from your POV, especially the early years, I'm sure you had some struggles compared to now. What did the logistics and shipping look like when catching the fish, conserving it, packaging it, and then actually shipping it to the consumer? How does that look?
Yeah, so the whole process looked like we would, depending on when we could fish. So Alaska seafood is like, it's considered the gold standard for sustainability because we are managed at a state and federal level. So like every single day, multiple times a day, we've got Alaskan Fish and Game checking to make sure we have enough fish escape, essentially make it by the commercial fishermen to make it upriver to spawn.
Yeah.
And so the timing can vary. Like they'll be like, okay, hey guys, you guys can go fish for 24 hours tomorrow, or they'll restrict the amount of time or where we can fish depending on what they're seeing in that given season. So yeah, when we started, they'd be like, okay, you guys can fish for 24 hours. We start from 7 a.m. Monday morning, fish till 7 a.m. the next day, and then we would come back to port, and then this is where our operation was a lot different than other commercial fishermen. When the fishing period ended, everyone else would just go home, like, then go to sleep, take a nap, take care of the boat. When we finished fishing, that's when the next set of work started. We'd have to fillet and cut all the fish, right? And then so we'd spend another 12 hours filleting all the fish. And for us, it was just the three of us. And this is our first time doing it, so obviously we were a lot slower. And then so once we fillet it, we would package it, put it in put it in a box with ice, and then we box it up and then put it on a jet. And so that time frame is very short. So like from the moment we caught it to delivery to our restaurants, it was 48 hours.
Okay.
Right. So like we were getting salmon all the way from Alaska to DC within 48 hours, which was like unheard of.
Yeah.
Right. So it was insane. So like all those chefs that took early on that took a chance on us, like they loved it. And it's been really cool. Like first, like seeing their reaction and being able to be a part of, their operation too.
Definitely. In those early years, especially gaining the credibility from these chefs, what was the main marketing strategies to prove that the difference compared to other companies out
there? That's hilarious because we had no marketing strategy. It was because like we had no like I couldn't even offer samples. Like I was in so much debt. Like whatever fish that we had caught, I had to sell. I couldn't afford to put up extra inventory to just give out for free. And so my marketing strategy was, show up at these restaurants, find the decision maker and tell them like, this is what we can do and execute on that. And I think a lot of people, like, especially like the chefs, like they understand I think from their point of view is like, if this kid is even like slightly telling the truth and what he can do, it's definitely going to be worth it for us to take that initial risk to see if he actually comes through on it. Because delivering to them within 48 hours is so fresh. And like for them is like, they've never had an opportunity like that before. Or if they had, like very few do. So our marketing strategy was really just get in front of the chef or decision maker and introduce ourselves.
Amazing. Love it. So what time period was it where you shifted from, you started going to restaurants and chefs, and then you are today going to consumers and home. So what was that point? And I'm sure there's a lot of logistics that happened with that.
Yeah. So that point, we really made the big switch was like when the pandemic happened, because all of our business, like, just overnight, just shut off.
Yeah.
All of our restaurants just completely done. And then all of a sudden we were just like, oh shit, what do we do?
Yeah.
And it's different when it's just like, you're a solo founder and you're like the only one on the payroll. It's no big deal. But I had crew members, right? They trust me working with me to be able to provide them with the check to feed their families.
Yeah.
Right? So all that extra pressure like started to creep up, and I just took some time and was like, okay, well, who are we? Like what was our objective and our mission in the first place before we even started? What was our goal? Like, what are we doing today? And it was, right, making seafood more accessible, making high quality seafood more accessible. And I was like, okay, well, if people aren't eating at restaurants, they've got to be eating at home.
Yeah.
And so I built up this nasty, really heinously ugly landing page. Cameron, honestly, it's like Shopify, like there's so many like template builders that make it so easy to make a beautiful landing page. I still managed to ruin it. Like this really ugly landing page. And, we put it up and just, it was a one pager. I told us, someone started like, hey, like we're a group of commercial fishermen. We want to cut out the middleman. We want to ship directly to your homes.
Yeah.
That's all we had. That's all I really like for my skill set. That's all I really knew how to do at the time. And we put it online, wrote a couple blogs, and yeah, within the first month, we saw like insane traffic. We got 4,000 people signing up to our wait list.
Wow.
And for like a brand new, I mean, you know how hard it is to like rank on Google, like a brand new site with like no backlinks, like ground zero, like that was like insane.
That's amazing.
And so that first step, we're like, oh my God, like people are really interested. But then the thought behind my head was like, okay, this is like a really easy list, like, or ask. All they had to do is give me their email. Who knows if they're actually going to convert?
Yeah.
Right. And then so like we just kept working. And then at the time the season hadn't started yet. But then once the season started, we opened up sales and it took off. We did 6 figures in our first month.
Wow.
And so that I think that shows the strength of like what we're doing, and like people, like there's a demand for it.
Totally.
People care about where their seafood coming from, and like you said, like the people behind the product.
Definitely, it's amazing. So when you switched over to really direct to consumer and home, I'm curious, when you noticed this spike, what was the main demographic that you noticed, especially being completely new to this market for you guys? What did that look like?
It's going to be pretty surprising, but our demographic we have a strong demographic in like the millennial Gen Z, like the later Gen Z, which is very surprising. We thought it'd be like, but there's not like one that's like, they are skewed like a little bit more, but we have a balance across like all demographics. Like, yeah, that's also something we're still trying to figure out.
Totally.
So I would say we got a full spectrum of people who are buying seafood, people who are buying it, because they just really love the taste, and they love salmon, they love sushi, sashimi. And then there's also a huge chunk who are eating for, to like solve a problem, like solve like their medical or, like their doctor recommended it, things like that. So we do have a full spectrum.
Amazing. From this consumer model at home, I'm curious, what does that process look like? I know from the chefs in the earlier years, 42 hours or wherever that was, that time for 48 delivering. What does that look like from home? Is it the same strategy from there?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So we have additional steps when we go direct to consumer. And so, the chefs, they can receive it within 48 hours. But for us, we have extra steps because we want to make it more convenient to consumers. For example, when we send it to the chefs, it's fresh, not frozen. But then when they get it, they have people to like fillet the fish, and they also have their own flash freezers, which is really important to make it sushi grade. Yeah. Right. And so most consumers don't have these freezers that can go to negative 20 degrees. So we have that at our facilities. So how the restaurant business model is different from the consumer is the additional steps that we take, we fillet it, and then we portion them into convenient 6-ounce portions. So the customer doesn't have to do anything. And then we flash freeze it at negative 20 for a minimum of 3 days. And then that qualifies for sushi grade. And then, we box it up and ship it directly to the home. So then by the time they get it, there's no additional work for them. They don't have to cut the fish. They can put it straight in their freezer, or, take a couple pieces out and thaw it out for that night's dinner.
Amazing. I'm curious, through the years, what have you found to be your best seller, especially from consumers at home?
Our best seller for sure is our Copper River salmon.
Okay.
Are you familiar with it? Have you heard of Copper River salmon before?
I have not tried it, but I've heard of it. Yes.
Okay, cool. And so I guess I'll just give a quick rundown for the listeners who haven't
Yeah.
heard of it. There are hundreds of rivers that salmon return home to back in Alaska. But what makes Copper River specifically so unique is that it's over 300 miles long. So uh, it's the most intense migratory route out of any salmon run in Alaska.
Mm.
What that means is, as the salmon is growing up, living its life out in the ocean, it has to eat a ton of food and build up a lot of fat in order to make that 300-mile journey home.
Yeah.
Because once they live in the ocean, but the moment they hit that fresh water to return home to spawn, their body like changes. They go into reproduction mode, so they stop feeding. So they have to essentially have enough fat to last 2 to 4 weeks of swimming, which is a lot. So the salmon that Copper River salmon carry an insanely high amount of like omega-3, high fat content, and which is why it makes it so famous, because it's just got much better flavor.
Yeah. Amazing.
Yeah.
So I like to conclude each episode with this. If you can share one piece of advice with an aspiring entrepreneur, maybe something you've learned or regret along the way, what would that be?
Yeah, that's a really good question. My one advice to entrepreneurs is believe in yourself. Yeah. Okay. That sounds super like cheesy, but believe in yourself, because if you don't, no one else will. I think with like my story, that's definitely how I started. So that'd be my advice.
Amazing. Well, Kyle, thank you so much for joining me today. And to the listeners out there, make sure to check out aksalmonco.com.